So I was doing a video on how First Brands ended up being what it was, looking at three companies, and you'll see it a little bit, how they ended up getting gobbled up and making this behemoth that is now a massive problem. Well, while I was, editing and stuff, I looked up and I found a new problem, and I'm going to put the article here. I'm gonna kind of read through it, not the whole thing, because it's already, there's more video after this. But it turns out lavish CEO lifestyle linked to First Brand's $2 billion collapse. James has purchased a $23 million Malibu mansion as the company piled debt. Patrick James immigrated to the United States, blah, blah, blah. However, First Brands filed for bankruptcy after disclosing that over $2 billion is unaccounted for. $2 billion is missing from this company. New directors worked with forensic accountants to investigate the mismatch in First Brands' financing arrangement. The CEO borrowed over $10 billion from major players despite earlier lawsuits from business partners who claimed he made misrepresentations in financing arrangements. First Brands secured funding through off-balance sheet financing, such as borrowing against monies owed by clients, which is invoice loans. A lot of hard money guys use that, usually not the best. It also secured supply chain financing from institutions that lent money against receivables, also very expensive. The arrangements grew over time into billions of dollars off-balance sheet debt. James' strategy for First Brands was to expand the company through acquisitions of auto parts. The company now has operations across 5 continents, and immediate growth was supported by corporate debt of over $6 billion, which is now much more. Lenders said James' company was getting into trouble entering 2025 after piling more off-balance sheet debts. First Brands became reliant on Utah-based Onset Financial, oh dear Lord, which offered funds at a higher return rate. In May 2025, a company affiliate stopped making monthly payments to Onset, which then demanded millions of dollars in late fees and payment hikes. Hard money. He was working to refinance the $6 billion in loans. When the lenders find out, and I went over this part in my previous thing. Now, he also believed that he could try to unload this company. He thought he can get $12 billion for it. There are no buyers for it. Now they're in bankruptcy, and lenders demand that the company bring in new independent directors to examine the books. Directors found $2 billion more in borrowings that underlying accounts receivable. James is blaming everybody. He's trying to blame the economy, trying to blame all these other things because it's not looking good. He's alleged, but this is usually not good behavior of somebody that didn't do anything wrong. To start throwing everybody under the bus. He had pretty much other lawsuits. 2009 lawsuit filed by a creditor alleged that James made omissions and gave false understandings of the financial strengths of those companies and the value of the collateral. Years later, in 2011, unpaid credit alleged that James used affiliate companies to divert funds to himself. He also split off a part of his Variform conglomerate in 2018, and the remaining portfolio, which included Trico, and oversaw the aftermarket business, which later combined to rebrand as First Brands. James presented Variform as a standalone asset and allegedly lured debt capital from new investors the following year. The company filed for bankruptcy in Canada around the same time. James began expanding his personal real estate assets, which included a $23 million Malibu mansion. So there is an update on First Brands, and this is not ending anytime soon. This is going to end in a very, very big mess. We're all in a lot of trouble. Hope you enjoy the rest of the video, which is going to be going over how the heck that all happened, because I picked 3 companies, and you'll see. But please comment. Your comments have been wonderful. They've actually been overwhelming, and I love it. I've been trying to go through as many as I can, and wow. So hang in and watch this video to the end, because you're gonna see how this can happen. I am wowed by the amount of comments. I mean, the amount of views is amazing, but the amount of comments on this video about First Brands collapsing It was absolutely amazing, and I was totally floored by it. Because I did that just so the information could get out there, because there's still not really reporting on this, and it's bad. In fact, as of this recording on December 18th, the situation has turned from pretty bad to, oh dear God, how are they going to actually figure out how to fix this? It's not a good situation for anyone involved, not the 26,000 American workers that are part of the company, not the banks that lent the money, not us as the end users, because as one of the comments pointed out, as an end user, we're the ones that are going to end up getting screwed. And that's what honestly always happens. So going through these comments, though, there's a lot of predetermined answers on why this happened and how this happened. And the first thing is, this had nothing to do with stockholders, share price, and nothing, because it's a privately held company. There is no share price. It's privately held. Second of all, it had nothing to do with tariffs. A lot of the stuff's just made in the United States. They actually have large manufacturing in the United States. It has nothing to do with it. In fact, really, it hasn't made that much of an impact on a lot of things. The only company that tried to make a big deal about it was Stellantis, and that's because they build garbage. I mean, they stopped making two products we don't care about, the Hornet and the electric charger. So there's that. And it really had nothing to do with Chinesium. I saw a lot of comments on that. The quality of the parts isn't the problem with this company. I mean, granted it is. I mean, I don't use these parts except Cardone, because Cardone just rebuilds stuff that you can't get anymore. And that's really a big thing, is that Cardone going away would be very bad. I don't think it's going to go away, but the bankruptcy is going to take such a long time to clear up. It's going to be very messy, very, very messy. So I want to go over three of the companies that are involved in this conglomerate, because, and this is not unique, because there are multiple conglomerates now in the United States that make most of our parts. The biggest is Holley. Holley owns so many different things at this point, but Holley didn't leverage like this company. So honestly, they just, have made money. Granted, there is also the call that a lot of things that Holley have bought, the quality has dropped off like a stone. And I can see that. MSD, the quality has dropped off. But, that's just the way things go as conglomerates happen, because you're not going to have the highest quality. But we're going to go back to the three companies that are part of this, explain how we got here, because their stories are pretty much the same as a lot of other good companies that ended up having situations beyond their control, caused them to get into a situation where somebody with more money came and just bought them. Now, none of these companies were hostile takeovers. This was all agreed upon, predetermined price. Nothing hostile about it. The problem was that the owner of First Brands leveraged the living hell out of everything to buy them, which probably isn't the best way to grow your business. We're going to see an ongoing theme with these three companies of U.S. government regulations and the automakers as part of the issue with why we are. And it really is. They are the two main driving forces in the aftermarket arena. We're going to start first with Carter Carburetors. Carter Carburetors started in 1909 by William Carter. He was a bicycle shop owner, and he wanted to make a better carburetor, and he did. And there's something about bicycle shop owners, because the Wright brothers were a bicycle shop owner also. Go figure that one out. But, they were the preeminent carburetor company up through the early 70s. They made the first 4-barrel for Buick in 52. They made the William Carter 4-barrel for the 1955 Chrysler 300. They had an exclusive deal with Chrysler. They brought us, the AFB, the AVS, and the Thermoquad, my favorite. In fact, their relationship with Chrysler was so deep that the Thermoquad was designed in short street use for Chrysler. Ford used it on some vehicles, but it was designed for Chrysler, 100%. That's why it ended up on every motor by 1980. Literally, 318s had them. The only motor that never got it from the factory was the slant. Literally. But they made the 2 barrels for them. They made the 1 barrels for them. They were the predominant manufacturer of OEM carburetors. What happened to them was that they were tied to Chrysler. Chrysler's sales fell off like a stone. Starting in 77, they started losing tens of millions of dollars, then hundreds of millions of dollars. Then 1979 rolls around and they're basically bankrupt. So what they started doing is paying their suppliers and IOUs. And the government was fine with this. Through the bailout, they actually told them, yeah, you can do this. So Carter kind of never got be made whole. And so Carter lost a lot of money. And they went under in 1985. But it wasn't because of the invention of fuel injection or the going to fuel injection, because Chrysler used carburetors up until 87, 88, and they were using Rochesters at that point. They had the same bores on the bottom, their spread bore. No, it ended up being that they ran out of money. I mean, being tied to Chrysler killed them. And they didn't have any money for research, and they didn't really have a great aftermarket. They really didn't. I mean, it was very tiny compared to Holley's. That really is what sank them, because Holley still made carburetors. They still make them today. So it isn't because they just made carburetors. It's because there's a lot of other factors involved. Now, when they went belly up in 85, being part of American Car and Foundry Company, they ended up getting split up amongst a bunch of people. Morelli, which ended up having the Edelbrock, which the AFB and the AVS, the Edelbrock still makes today. Holley bought a lot of the intellectual properties, and Federal Mogul bought the fuel pump part of the conglomerate, the fuel pump and all the fuel system things. And that's the part that First Brands ended up buying in 2018, because I guess Federal Mogul, they're a mess also. And that's another massive company that is private equity that makes a lot of substandard parts. I want to hear your comments on this as I go along, because it's fascinating. I love seeing what everybody's thinking. It really is community. So comment below. The next one is kind of an interesting story. It's Ray Bestis. Yeah, Ray Bestis. They were a company that originally founded. They made brake linings and they made clutch material in 1902. A.H. Raymond. It was called A.H. Raymond Company. They became Ray Bestis in 1916, which was basically naming the company after their biggest product, which was their brake liners, because they literally cornered the market on bonded brake linings. And things went swimmingly for them using the asbestos as brake lining material. It was going really great. I have a feeling that may come into play a little bit later, though. They became the largest OEM and aftermarket brake company in the United States through the 60s. But during that time, their CEO and a lot of executives were kind of hiding that asbestos was not good for you. Oops. And they also did a lot of polluting in the town of Connecticut. Still, they're cleaning up today. I mean, they were just literally dumping and burying asbestos products. Good stuff. So with all that happening is that they tried to break up their company into Raytech and Raymark, to try to shield the main part of the company, which would be Raymark, and have Raymark have the brake stuff and there be, okay. Unfortunately, the courts didn't see that way, and they got sued very heavily in the 90s, and they lost. Well, they had a leg to stand on. But the thing is, the whole settlement ended up being with just a $54 million endowment for the victims of asbestos. So if you win your claim, you get $2,500. That's what I read online. I did a lot of research. I may be wrong, but I'm like, wow, that really... So you ruined these two companies. A lot of people went out of jobs, and it was for almost nothing. It doesn't seem like the best scenario actually happened at that point. Really doesn't seem well at all. And so what ended up, they went into bankruptcy. They got bought by Brake Parts, Inc., and then really got sucked up into First Brands. So that's where they are. And they still are a major brake manufacturer in the United States. Not my first choice. I mean, they're slightly better than Wagner's. I mean, that's really not saying a lot. But, I mean, they still are used by a lot of people. And they make, and brake pads and other friction materials. So it's kind of a big deal that they are part of this mess. The last one is Autolite. Everybody knows Autolite, especially if you build a hot engine. If you have a souped up engine, a lot of times they tell you to use the Autolite, race plugs because they're colder and they don't foul as easy. That was always the thought. They started way back when. They started in 1911, and they made buggy light generators. And they fully developed spark plugs in 1936 with the ceramic on them. And they became the suppliers to Packard, Studebaker, and Chrysler at that point. They were bought by Ford in 1960, but then were forced to be sold by Ford in 1973 because of government antitrust, which I'm still trying to figure out how that was a conflict of interest, an automobile manufacturer owning spark plug company. Hello, AC Delco. I'm a little confused over this, but this starts the turmoil with Autolite because Fram Allied bought it in '74, and then Honeywell bought them as like a side gig. Honeywell made it as a consumer product line, but then in 2011, after the Great Recession, they spun it off to Fram Group, and of course, then Fram Group was so limping along at that point that they were bought up by First Brands. Now, the bad thing about Autolite is through all this turmoil is that their plugs are made in China. They're Chinesium. I wouldn't put an Autolite in my car if it was the last thing on earth. It's just not something I would ever run. It's sad. But those three companies had unfortunate things happen to them, became ripe for takeovers. And there's been a lot of other companies like this that have just been, because of the way our laws are in the United States, and some things are good, some things are bad, but like the intellectual property laws, and I'm going to explain a little bit about this. People are saying, oh, well, somebody take the patents and start building the products. It doesn't work that way because the original patent holder for that product, intellectual property owner for that product, has the final say on you making that product in the United States. And this is kind of a part of the problem with our supply, because like Stellantis had nothing to do with my 72 Charger, nothing to do with it. But they own all the intellectual property. So anything gets made for this car, I'm talking down to new brake calipers. Let's say Racebestos wants to make a brake caliper. They have to pay Stellantis, a fee to then sell that product. They have to pay a licensing fee. They also have to get all the CAD drawings and everything, all the process for making it approved by said company. And this is for all the manufacturers in the United States for aftermarket parts. Some are easier to deal with than others. Ford doesn't seem as bad as Stellantis. General Motors kind of wishy-washy in the middle of the way, but they also have their fingers in a lot of different companies, so it's a little less bad. But, what the sad thing is that this actually kills competition and it hurts the consumer. Because a lot of these things, you don't have many companies running to make parts for stuff. Like my Charger is almost impossible to buy a lot of things. And when I had to buy it, I gotta suck it up and spend. Like a voltage regulator now on my Charger, I'm talking not even a great quality one, is like $30, $35. I mean, seriously, if I want an American one, I'm talking $70. And the reproduction one's actually made in China, and that's $80. There used to be a regulator for these cars was like $5 because it really isn't a complex thing. It's a very simple regulator. And you look at this, and this is where the problem is really starting to come to a head. And us as the consumer are getting kind of squoze on this. So, and then you have companies like First Brands that just do psychotic leverage buyouts, because that's what this was. It was basically leveraging to buy another company that was willing to sell itself, and basically digging a hole that you'll never get out of. And at the end of the day, the only people that are going to suffer is us, because we're the end user. So we usually end up getting the shaft. So, that's the report on this for now. There's probably going to be more. And, if you liked it, hey, hit like. If you liked it a lot, subscribe, share it. Hey, I'm a car guy like all of you. Help me spread the word about, fixing old cars and also things that are going to affect us. So thanks for your help. And of course, comment. So, once again, if you have something cool to drive or something fun, take it out, because you'll make someone's day, probably your own. And I will see you very soon.